Super welcome to tonight and to happy last year and transforming 2024, using a more circular, more feminine way of looking at how we can create space and time in our lives. So my name is Heidi Anderson, and I'm super excited to be here with you guys. A little bit of formation for the day. We're going to start with looking into the past year. And then we're going to be moving into the forward year. So I wanted to kind of give a little bit of background as to why are we doing it this way? Picture of what the solstices are and what the equinox is. So what we're going to be looking at is in a more circular way of thinking about time and planning. The new year actually has nothing to do with reality, because the way that that's was based so that our calendar will work, like with the days and being able to organize. Looking at the way that we do time, we have become very linear in the way that we plan, the way that we think. It's January 1st, we plan for the whole year. We decide on exactly what we're going to do. We map it out. So it's very linear. And our idea of getting there is also very linear. It's like, if I get there, I'm good. If I don't get there, I'm not good. So we go on this really black and white, good, bad, successful, not successful. And so in looking at an alternative way to do things, if we look more at like the agricultural or way of planning, looking at seasons, looking at like what actually happens to our planet. Well, we have the two solstices, which is we have a winter solstice, and then we have a summer solstice. And in places like Sweden, the summer solstice is a really big celebration. And in the rest of the world, actually, the winter celebration has been taken over and called Christmas, things like that. But traditionally, for thousands of years, it's been celebrated like mid-late around the 20th of December as the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. So the winter solstice and the summer solstice are two very clear points that are actually having to do with our world, with the way that we exist on our planet. And the other two would be called the equinoxes. So the equinox, you have a spring equinox and you have a fall equinox. And just for those of you in Swedish, I actually wrote this down because I can't say them in Swedish otherwise. So vintersolståndet is the winter solstice. And then we have sommarsolståndet. And then vårdagsjämning och höstdagsjämning. So those would be the equinoxes and the solstices. So this way of planning actually is circular. So we're actually going around in a circle, but it's almost more spiral because we're going to be checking back in, looking, where have I been and where am I going? If we look at a more linear masculine way, and when I use the words masculine and feminine, I'm trying to use more of the words like circular and linear, because we don't want to confuse the fact that these are qualities that we have inside of us. All of us have them inside of us. And some of us maybe have developed more of them. Like in the US, I know I was taught to have more feminine ones. Don't use the masculine ones, they're bad. In Sweden, women have been taught, use the masculine ones, don't use the feminine ones. But these actually are just different states inside of us, different qualities that we can work on. So if we look again in what has our world at least the last 4,000 years, specifically, in the last couple thousand, it becomes, and even more in the last couple of hundred, extremely linear in the way that we plan and we do, and it creates a huge amount of stress for us. It creates overwhelm. We put too much on our calendars. We try and get too much done. Is anyone recognizing themselves in this stuff? Like we so easily want to please everybody. And we take on too much and we stop listening to our bodies. In looking at some circular way of doing things, we start to be more in tune with who we are. And most of us are born in a female body, and that is going to have its own rhythm. And we have not been taught to actually listen to it, but to ignore it. And what we're interested in doing is starting to become more sensitive to it. Overwhelm, stress, it comes from refusing to listen to what's actually important to us whose life are we living? What is important to me personally and in my life, and doing what other people outside of me, society, patriarchy wants me to do. So this is kind of like a whole thing that we can look deeper at another time, but just for today, just kind of understanding. So this circular thing that I'm talking about, more feminine, really looking at, if I want to create something new, and we know that if we don't write things down, nothing new happens. So I want to write things down. But in my own personal experience, in writing things down in a very linear way or looking things in a linear way, I haven't felt so good. I easily can burn myself out. I'm highly sensitive, really affected by the seasons, by the amount of sun. So that's where I started getting into looking, okay, there's got to be another way. There has to be something else that fits more who I am as a female living in this society. So to start with, then, we're going to start with looking back. So part of helping ourselves to ease our overwhelm, take on less, is to really know what our values is. What is important to me for real? What is it I need more of in my life, and what do I need less of in my life? And this actually, I've maybe some of you have already seen, I made a video, I don't know, it was like 4 years ago or something like that. But I'd had an experience where it was New Year's, I was sitting with my friends, and we were talking about, where the year that had been, and my memories, like that's kind of when I started going into menopause. So it was really dark. It was not, it was dark out and it was dark in, and it felt really pretty awful. And when I came home from that experience, I started to think about how can I do this in a different way? How can I remember back in a different way? Because all I could remember was negative things. And so I made myself a flower, and I went through my phone and I looked at all the details of what my life had been. And what I discovered was there was a lot of stuff that I had forgotten. What we know about memory is that memory creates our stories about who we think we are, and most of it is made up. I know that sounds really awful. It's hard to believe, but that's the reality. Most of the ideas of who we think we are and the memories that we have actually have nothing to do with reality. They're made up stories. And so in going back and looking very specifically at different experiences that I had, it helped me to recreate the year. And that's where happy last year comes from. Because to be able to create something new, we have to know who we are, what didn't work, and what did work to be able to go forward in a way that doesn't overwhelm us. So happy last year. In starting to look at our happy last year, and like I said, I'll go into more detail around what we're going to do with it. But what I'd like you to do before we do anything else is, if you have a candle, can you light your candle? Because we're going to create sacred space. Before we actually start our ritual, we're going to create sacred space. And sacred space, actually, we have a part of the brain called the God brain, which is actually kind of really interesting, because it loves ritual. I love that one, Corin. Ritual helps our brain to process meaning. And so whether or not you believe in stuff, it really doesn't matter. Like, I love the quote from Albert Einstein. He says, and you can believe everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. I like miracle. I think it's a lot more fun. So I do ritual for the same reason. So light your candle. Wow, everything gets fuzzy in my thing here. So you can light your candle. We've lit our candle. If anyone has a candle to light, have something to help you create sacred space for yourself. I helped create my sacred space by I have some crystals, I have my crayons and all my beautiful things here. And we're going to start with a meditation. So if you close your eyes and just start to feel in to this moment, get present with yourself, perhaps feeling your feet on the floor, taking a deep breath in and out. Just kind of noticing what kind of energy is going on in your body. So see if you can be aware of the physicality. If there's a little stress because you were rushing to be here. Maybe noticing your heart, your feet. Knowing that whatever you've already been a part of today is going to be affecting you. So if your mind is wandering to what's happened or to the dinner you haven't had a chance for yet, that's completely normal. Just acknowledging, okay, fine. I'm coming back to right here. Perhaps noticing any kind of stress that's showing up in your body. Really getting a sense of yourself where you are right now. And then start to envision us as a group. So here we are, a group of us, even though we aren't physically in connection, we can energetically be in connection. So start to envision a circle. If it helps, you can envision holding at your hands, holding hands with the rest of the women. And start to send generosity and kindness out into the group. But within this safe space, we can hold each other, to hold whatever shows up for us with our highest intention, our highest, goodest, best. To see with clarity and open eyes. And know that as you are sending into the circle kindness, generosity, open-heartedness, that it is also being sent to you. So practice receiving. So we are creating a coherence, an energetic coherence of holding space, of safety for each other. And holding your hand over your heart. With compassion and kindness for yourself, for this journey, and know that you will be held. And then taking your arms up above your head and stretching, yawning. And opening your eyes. And if you want, you can put into the chat how that experience was for you. Part of what we're going to do now is I thought that was a really good idea to then you'll see my messy background, but if it works, I'm going to undo this so I can show my pictures. There, now you can see. All right, what we're going to do is something that looks like this. So this is my daughter's. I don't know if you all can see it very well. So this is my daughter's happy last year. She's 17, and it's really fun because I have these from her for like 6 or 7 years. I think this is the 7th year I've done it. So I've collected these every year. And that is what we are going to do. I'm going to show you these pictures, and then when you start working, I'm going to look for the other ones just so that it'll be easier for you guys to see. But what we're going to start doing is on your piece of paper, you are going to make 3 circles. And on your 3 circles, we're going to divide them up into 3 areas. So here is like an example, 3 circles. You can do it that way or this way. I've started doing them this way now because I have so many things to put in there. And what you're going to put into those 3 circles are work, love, and energy. I have slides of all this for you guys. So work, love, and energy. Like I said, it might be easier to put them that way. That's what I've done. Here's mine for this year. So, and then you're going to get your journal and your telephone. I actually started with my telephone because I thought it was a lot easier. And I went back and went through each month and just kind of looked through the different pictures to start to get an idea of what things showed up. So you can start doing that, start going through. Does anyone have any questions around that? And one more suggestion is that before you make your flower petals, so you've got your things, right? Start by writing out all the different things as a line, because you can put on the petals later. So what we're doing is we are looking for the flowers and the flower petals of our lives. So I'm going to give you some time to work on this. It's actually, it can take a while. I think I spent a few hours doing it, but I think it's so much fun. But at this point, you can start with going through and finding from each month, what were the highlights from each month? And then kind of notice that some of them are going to be like bigger things, like I went skiing with my daughter. And then smaller things, like my kitty followed me on a walk every single day. Oh, okay, great. Thank you for asking. All right. So before you put the petals in, you can start to write out different memories or experiences. Like from the pictures in your telephone, like I have pictures of my cat going on a walk with me, like of her tail. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's right. I went with a kitty. That felt amazing. And you put it under the area. So we have these 3 areas, right? We have energy, we have love, and we have work. Love would be anything that has to do with relationships, anything that gives me energy. Like one of the things I did this last year is I started walking 10,000 steps every single day, really clearly. That gave me tons of energy. I started doing intermittent fasting to help with hormones, totally give me energy. And then in relationship, for right now, put any of the negative things down on the bottom, and we're going to make them into kryptonite or into stones. So anything negative is going to go down at the bottom, kind of by the roots. And the positives are going to be up on the flowers as petals. But again, I nowadays, I write my things and then I make the flower petal afterwards. So some things can be on both of, they can be in my rocks at the bottom, my kryptonite, or they can be as a flower petal, like my kids. They can sometimes be on both of those, different difficulties or things that we're having. It's the same with love and energy, like going sailing with my husband. Well, that gives me energy, and it's also in my love department. It was the same like with my daughter in skiing, gave me energy, but it also is on my love. Did that make more sense? So more things. Did that make enough sense about energy? Okay, good. And I'm gonna grab some help and see if I can get this to work. But this was just an example. Thank you. You can see here at the bottom where it says rocks or kryptonite. So that's where you can put the not so fun things. But let's start with just focusing on the, or I mean, you can work on it in any way you want. Does anybody have any more questions? I'm gonna say, let's see, show you another example here. All right. So if you look back, was there anything that you did that was maybe in the more work related? Work also can be service. Like a bunch of years, I actually wrote service on mine instead of work, because I felt like my work is service. So I did a lot of voluntary work. I've written all of the voluntary things I've done, if it's for the kids at school, if it's with the inner development goals at Klustret, where I'm sitting as a co-working space. I put all of those things in there. So anything that would be, yeah, the service that you're giving back to the world in some way or another. I mean, service can even be, if you were sick, but you're maybe taking care of an animal. Or so we're really just looking at ways to help ourselves to remember, because we want to rewire our brains around the story based on reality and not just based on some memories of negativity. Health is definitely in the energy department. So, one of the things could be writing down, like if you've had long time COVID, writing down all the details around things that you did to take care of yourself. Like it can be small details. So one of the things that we've learned from a mindfulness perspective is the smaller we make it, the better. I mean, the big stuff we can see. The small stuff is what we often forget. Like the tiny moments. Like when I was actually doing mine, I don't want to disturb you by talking while you guys are working on this. But it was just, again, it was a really interesting experience of having a memory of what half of last year was that actually it wasn't true. And it was huge. It was powerful. Again, it's like I'm so surprised every year by, oh, right, okay. Like tiny little things that I actually did do and that brought me joy or that created energy. Um, some of them are more clear, like eating dinner with my twins every other Sunday because they're 23 now. I'd forgotten that we were doing that because it's such a normal thing. Um, and then the key also is really feeling it, like while you're doing it, really feeling the energy of all those moments, of the joy that you felt while you were doing the thing with your whatever it was. Taking a hike and seeing the sunset. I don't know. That's one thing that I have a lot of pictures of: flowers, sunset, and cattails. Because those are things that show up in my life, or skis, or water from kayaking. So some of them, no, it wouldn't mean anything to anyone else, but for me, it brings joy when I remember to remember. Okay, yeah, I can give examples in the work category. So I'm going to look at mine. In my work category, I volunteered 3 different times this last year for something called the Inner Development Goals. It's a big summit that we have here in Stockholm, and I worked as, like, one of the times I worked for a few different days and evenings. So I put that under work because for me, work and service are kind of in connection with each other. In the spring, this last spring, I held a spring equinox celebration, and I put that under work because that was something I was doing that felt important to me. It also ended up under my energy because it was fun, and it brings me joy to be able to do it and do it with other people. I think I mentioned I sit at it's actually not a co-working so much as a co-creation space. And I'm in one of the circles there where we work together. And I put on that, and there's no money related to this. It's only, it's something that I'm passionate about its sociocracy, thinking about circular change within community, within organizations, and we're practicing it. So that ended up on my work. So none of those things I just mentioned were actually related to money, but they were related to my work, what I see as my work here on the planet. And then I work as a therapist and as a coach. So I have my coaching clients. I have some of my my therapy clients that I held, both online and then live. So those are under my work. Writing letters, like to send out to my group, like right now, that would be under work. Does that help? So, it's not like perfect. We do it, I mean, we do it in whatever way works for us. So if you want to work service, work, whatever, that's fine. It's the same with energy and love. Love can also just be relationships. It's not so important. It's more that it just gives us a format that isn't linear to look at the year that we've just had. So I'm going to give you guys like 5 more minutes to just, and I know that it's not enough time to finish it, but I want to be able to get on to the other part. So if you can look through and at least, through your months, so you get a kind of a general where you've got some of the bigger picture things and some of the smaller things. And then I'd like to ask that you, if you don't finish it now, go back and fill it in. So the one I have up here is from my daughter from 4 years ago, which is kind of cool. I hope she doesn't mind me showing it. Here's mine from 2018. Hopefully I didn't put anything on there that's like embarrassing. Some of these I have to like maybe blacken out. No, it's too hard to read maybe. Okay. So with the roots, if you want to start putting in the roots, so we've got our rocks or our, I call them kryptonite because it takes all of my energy away. Those are the things that took away my energy, that acted as, rocks in the roots of my trying to grow as a human being. And then the roots themselves were things that I either discovered or that became really important to me. Like this year, I learned that boundaries are love. And usually I do this when I'm done with everything, because I can start to have a clearer idea of kind of the sense of what last year looked like. And it's the same with the leaves. So we'll get to those things once. And have you already gotten your petals on? Some of your petals? Yeah, this is going to take a little while. And that's the point. It's supposed to be really fun. And then, of course, you can play with crayons and stuff. Like these ones, I usually use pens and markers and crayons, but I color them in afterwards. I find it easier to draw them first.
Can I ask you, Heidi, the roots, what was that?
Okay, so when we get to the roots are, and I've kind of done them different ways, but different kinds of values or things I've discovered. So one of the things I learned from last year, and this is actually one of the questions we're going to get to, and that's why with the roots and the leaves, we might want to wait just a few minutes. I can start to kind of give you a sense, but I want you to be able to do some writing, journaling around this. So both roots and leaves. Roots for me have been learnings, some things that were really important to me, things I've learned, or things that were important to me.
And the leaves?
And the leaves, things maybe I'm proud of. Things that maybe I had forgotten to celebrate about myself. Those can both be like petals, but they also can be leaves. So I've kind of done it a little different in different years. I'm going to look at this one. The leaves can also be values that you start to notice that are showing up. So roots would be more like what I've learned. Like in the one that from 2018, I said I did new things. That was one of my leaves. I tried new things. I was really proud of doing the Vasalapet. It really was hard for me. I was really proud of it. That was also something, it was under my energy because it gave me energy, but it was something that really was important to me. The fun thing too is actually, being able to look back through the years, because again, we can have an idea about stuff that might not actually have anything to do with reality because of the emotion that we're in now. And that's what we're really wanting to get down, but in a really playful way, kind of like looking at the cycles. And we have to revisit these cycles of our lives. So as a woman who walked back and forth to her mistress's house every day, carrying 2 large pots of water, and she had them on a stick. And on one of these pots, it was a whole beautiful pot, and it carried a full thing of water, and the other pot had a crack in it. And by the time that she would get to her mistress's house, it would be half empty. And these 2 pots would have a conversation about how much water they can carry. And the full one was really proud and, wow, I can carry, a whole full pot to the mistress's house and give her. And the pot that had crack was ashamed and felt like, oh my gosh, I'm flawed. I can only deliver half of a pot of water. And every day I go, you pick me up, you carry me back, and you deliver only half. And I've not been able to reach my full potential. And the woman who was carrying the pots felt sorry for the pot with a crack in it and said, you know what? I'd like to show you something. Just watch along the path while we walk from the well to the mistress's house and just notice what is along the path. And the cracked pot noticed that there were flowers growing along the path and that it was beautiful. And there were many different colors, and it had been a couple of years of growing of different kinds of seeds and flowers. And when they got to the mistress's house, the pot said, oh, that was beautiful, all of those flowers, but why do you want to show that to me? I'm just a broken pot and I can't deliver anything, only half my capacity. And the woman carrying the pot said, you know what? Every day when I have walked the path, I knew that you were cracked and you let out just a little bit of water all along the path while I walked. And I planted seeds there, and you watered those seeds and allowed them to grow. And I have picked those flowers and taken them to our mistress's home and made it beautiful for her. So I knew that your crack was there, and it was exactly what was needed to grow these beautiful flowers. So what I'd like us to do now is to close our eyes again and reconnect again with yourself. So here we are in this group. And it may be that as you looked over the last year, that perhaps there were some places we felt like a cracked pot. And you know how that feels. I'd like to ask you now to step into the role of the woman carrying the pots. That part of you, the wild, wise woman, who is there for everyone, who perhaps is really an advocate for people at their work, or really there for their children, really see them. The wise, wild woman within you who actually can see with clarity and support the people around her. And now turn her and those eyes of wisdom toward yourself. Looking at you as the broken pot, knowing full well your potential, your pain, your joy, your strengths. Really feel into her capacity to see you, to hold you. And if this is being painful or difficult, you can again remember when you've actually really been there for someone else and know that strength inside of you and where it feels in your body. For anything that you truly believe in or active for, find it in your body and turn it towards yourself. And start to feel into this deeper part of yourself. Remember back to this last year. Where did you feel the most like yourself? Who are you when you're most yourself? Who are you when you're giving your gifts? Breathe into who you are when you're giving your gifts. Where are the winds or the flowers in your life? Your accomplishments, your achievements? And who contributed in your life to these flowers, to these winds? You can open your eyes and start to journal, perhaps looking at the flower that you've started to create, and just notice from those flowers and write down for yourself, where did you most feel like yourself this last year? What did the circumstances look like? An example can be, I was up hiking in Abisko in the north of Sweden for a week, and I felt like I was completely enough. It was an amazing experience. I was most myself in these vast mountains. So where in your life did you feel like you were most yourself? And who are you when you're most yourself? So where did you most feel like yourself this year? Who are you when you're most yourself? Who are you when you give your gifts? And who contributed in your life to your flowers and your wins? Then you can go on to, what did I learn? And reflecting over my flowers, what did I learn? And then going on, what do I need to let go of and release? So once you've discovered what you learned, you can see, what do you need to let go of? So one of the ways that I've dealt with the release is taking a piece of paper and writing down different things that I want to release and ripping them into like a piece of, so that I can burn it. So, you can have 3 pieces of paper. You can take 1 piece of paper and cut them into bits. And then you can put them in a bowl. And you can either put them into your fire or you can burn them. So that is a very symbolic way of letting them go. Another way is doing them as an offering, because on the other side of what we need to let go of are lessons. Something that I work with is post-traumatic growth. So as an alternative, it's a way of reframing. So looking at the things that have been painful for us or difficult, things we want to let go of, there's always something that we can learn. There's a way to take that memory and help us catapult into our future. That's a form of resilience. But unless we see it, we can't change it. So it's not dwelling in it, it's holding it from this wise woman space. I call her my Shiro, my she hero inside of me. Then the next aspect we're going to work on, I'll go into the post-traumatic growth. All right. So learning from trauma. Trauma is affecting us when it's still showing up, when it's a memory that's both in our body and in our mind as a story of something that happened, and it's affecting our now. So even if it happened a long time ago, it's something that's happening now for us. And with post-traumatic growth, we allow it to be a lesson. We allow it to be, and it's choosing. It's not a saying, okay, I'm over it. It's not saying that it was okay. It's looking at it with a metacognition, a bigger mind, to see, what can I learn from this? And sometimes it takes time for us to get there. Like, I know that I've had things in my own life where I just couldn't touch it. I had to give it more space and time to be able to see, what was the lesson? How do I choose to reframe this into a space of meaning? So not the actual words, but the concepts come from Viktor Frankl, who was in a concentration camp, about how we create meaning. So it's called post-traumatic growth. or reframing the past to be something that we can actually grow from. The reason that is so important for us in working in a circular way, a linear way of planning and making goals, it's straightforward. You don't look back, you just keep moving. You just keep moving. And you're not integrating, you're not reflecting. And what we're doing right now is a much more circular way. We're looking at, we're reflecting on, noticing, what did I learn? What went well, what didn't go well? Because this information helps us to create a complete different pathway for ourselves and going forward into making 2024 our best. Because they're not arbitrary like intentions that we're making then. They're based on emotion and experience. So before I go on to that lecture, I just want to do our last little bit here. So write down, what is your rose? Or maybe you have a couple of roses from last year. Pick one or two. Something that was particularly lovely for you. And then what was a thorn? Something that maybe it's still sticking you in the foot and it hurts. It's still there, maybe it's not gone. Or maybe it is gone, but it's a thorn. And then what's a bud? Something that's a possibility. It hasn't blossomed yet, but it has possibility. With things that have been really difficult, like I said, one of the things that was really hard for me in the last year, it took me a really long time, like 8 or 9 months, before I could actually have a different perspective on it and see. And I kept being aware of, okay, well, what's the post-traumatic growth? And I just couldn't touch it. It was too painful still. So I just had to keep being mindful of, all right, I'm not ready. Okay, fine. Take a step back, be generous, be kind, calm my system. So absolutely, it doesn't mean we can do this right away. That's why we're doing this as kind of a reflective process, right? And we're kind to ourselves and generous to ourselves. We're doing this as a gift, not to beat ourselves up. Okay, so an example of a rose, a thorn, and a bud. Okay, a rose. Okay, so one of my roses was that I hiked up Mount Kebnekaise, which is our highest mountain in Sweden, and I was so proud of myself because I didn't know if I could do that or not. So that was really something that stood out for me as a rose in my experience. Another rose was that the bus doesn't come all the way to our house part of the year because we live on the top of a hill or kind of up and it's too icy. And so I have to drive my daughter to the bus. And it means that I have to get up at 6:15 and drive her like 17 minutes there, and then I have to drive back. But the roses, I get to spend time with her. She's 17 years old. Do you guys know what that means? Like, 17 minutes with a 17-year-old in a car, and she talks to me, or we listen to music and laugh, or we're just together in silence. That's one of my roses. So that's an example. An example of a thorn, I don't want to tell y'all. Those are a little private. A thorn that was actually, I hiked the Camino and I had such horrible blisters that one day I cried the entire day and didn't think I was going to be able to survive. That was definitely a thorn. That was more of a very physical aspect of a thorn, but it's kind of like anything with our body that we're not expecting. Another thorn, night sweats, they totally suck. I'm mostly good with that now, but and a bud, a potential, something that maybe you started and that you can see that can lead somewhere. So for me, a bud was that I started growing veggies in my kitchen. I have no idea how it's going to work. It hasn't worked out as well as I thought, but it was a bud. It was something I had an idea for. I really wanted to do it. That was a bud. Is that more clear? All right, is everybody good now? So we can go forward. So let's close our eyes again. Come back into your body. Reconnect with that deeper part of yourself. The part of you that is wise. And if we need to reconnect with it, remember the feeling of wisdom, of seeing, of the perhaps power inside of you that you often show towards others. I mean, power as in taking care of, kindness, generosity, standing up for them. And sometimes it's soft and sometimes it's really powerful and hard, energetic. And turn her towards you. Feel her in your body. Start to get to know where she lives in your body when she shows up, and that you have access to her. Feel with every breath how she grows stronger, more viable. And if you need to, you can have a hand on your heart, fingers a little bit spread out. Almost as if you're holding yourself, giving yourself a hug. Allow yourself to feel held and seen. And with all the difficulties or things that were painful this last year, hand them to her. Knowing that she can create magic, she can create transformation, that each of these difficulties have a lesson and something we can grow from. We don't need to make sense of it. If the only thing is that we learned that we were stronger than we thought, that's huge. Or that we needed help, that it's okay to be vulnerable. So whatever it is, hand it to her. Because she can hold it all. She sees the cracked pot as perfect. That there's a gift. Take a deep breath and release. And once again, feel her power. You're wise woman. And from everything that you've looked at from this last year, What do you want to embrace? Who do you need to be? And what do you want to feel? Start to come in contact with your future self. So what we know is that we often base our idea of the future on from the past, but our future actually has nothing to do with the past. They're just projections. But then our future really is all the possibilities. And your future self beckons to you, calls to you. What does she look like? What qualities does she have? What is she asking of you? So you can open your eyes and start to write and journal on this. So we're going to do something very similar to what we did. So you can start with drawing 3 more circles on another piece of paper. Basically, you're just doing the same thing again, but this time we're going to start making our intentions based on what we've learned, based on what we've already seen. And the thing that is, again, circular with this is that often you plan for a whole year, right? You set your goals for the whole year. What do I want to accomplish? And this time we're actually only going for 4 months because we're doing it based on the solstices and the equinox. So you either can set your goals or your intentions from now to the summer solstice, or you can do it to the equinox. So I'm doing actually from solstice to equinox and from equinox to solstice. So I'm doing every 3 months. So it's quarterly, basically. Because I've noticed that for myself, doing a whole year, it has never worked. It's like too big, it's too huge. We need to break things down. And the reason that it's so much more powerful to do an intention instead of a goal very linear. We make it, we don't make it. It's good with clarity, but it can cause a lot of stress for us because it's about getting somewhere. What we're interested in is actually the path there. What does that path look like? And we focus on what's the feeling that I want to have. Let me give an example. So if I want to have a goal of a new garden, well, what's the feeling that I'm actually interested in? What is it that I'm actually interested in having? Or I want to have a new relationship. Actually, I've got one, but if that's your goal, what is the feeling that you want? I want to feel cared for. I want to be loved. I want to feel like I can share. Those are the feelings that I want. So what would help create those feelings for me? So you can start with doing in your flower with relationship or with love. You can start with being clear about what are the feelings I want. What are some ways that I can, accomplish that? Well, if I want to feel in connection, I can also feel in connection. I can start to envision it. I can make dates with my friends. I can put myself into position. So you can start to break it down. One of the things we know is that we very often, we have this idea of something, but we don't go into, well, we go into how to get it, but not what are the obstacles I'm going to reach when I get there. So we don't make any plan for the obstacles, right? So if we first go, well, what's the feeling that I want to have? That is going to be sustainable. Willpower is actually finite. and that willpower is usually what we use to reach a goal. It's not going to work, right? It's based on glucose and our energy levels, and but a feeling, a passion, something that is like an internal instead of an external, is a completely different experience for us. And the reason this works so well as an alternative to overwhelm is when we get lots of to-do lists and we feel like we have to do them all. When we've made ourselves a map, a flower garden for our future, and again, maybe it's only for a quarter, like I'm doing, it becomes very clear of what is actually really important to me. What gave me energy this last year and what took away energy? So when I start to look at that thing that I want, it helps me to be more clear about, is that actually the thing that I want? And if it really is, what are some of the both action steps to create the feeling of that thing? And we might need to break it down into teeny tiny bits. So here is one of mine when I started planning it. Can you still see the picture? Okay, good. So here we have energy, love, work. So I've done this a couple different ways in different years. This one was from 2019, I guess. So things that I really wanted to look forward to creating. And some of them happened and some of them didn't. But this was my intentions. And I really focused on what it was I wanted to feel. I made a plan to have a trip with my twins, have playful connection in daily life, have acceptance of differences with my kids because they're really different than I am. So they look like plain goals, but they were based on the emotion that I wanted to have around love. And it was the same with my work. What is the feeling that I want to have around work? What is the feeling that I want to have around energy? The roots here are the values that I wanted to have in my life. So I had meaningful connection, intuition, resilience, creativity. You can see some of these. And this was a way to really help myself to visually meet what was really important to me for real. And when I see this on a daily basis, so my intention then is that I look at it every morning when I meditate. I look at it and then I meditate. And it really helps me in keeping myself from getting overwhelmed because I remember what's really important to me for real. When I start to feel like I'm taking on too much, when I'm maybe not in line with what my real values are, it helps me to remember. And because these are done quarterly in my world, it makes them more doable. And I can go back and redo another one. I have like a fall of 2019. And then because I was doing them every 6 months. But I can see what worked, what didn't work. Where do I need to adjust? And it helps me to stay closer to my future self. Here's another one. These are very, they show who I am. This is from 2020. What are the things I wanted to feel and to remind myself I make a difference? On the left, or I don't know on your side, but different things. And then I also actually wrote in some of my kryptonite to remind myself of where I could get stuck. Just kind of as a reminder, not to go deep into it, but when I compare to others, I go into despair. So it says compare and despair. This is definitely it can take up even more time, but if, the intention is to see the possibility of creating our lives in a different way, in this more circular, more feminine way, that it really is a possibility for us to base our intentions on what we've experienced, what worked, what didn't work. What do I want more of? Because our future self is made from the small being. Who do I need to be? Well, I can see very clearly from last year, when I'm in my power, stuff happens. Okay, so that's something I want to work on. What are the qualities then? So I'm going to plan those in and put them in as specifics. We can actually accomplish more by doing less, but we have to be absolutely honest with ourselves. Is this something that's actually in line with my values and with where I want to go? If we have a very clear picture of our future self, it's much easier for us to make choices. I don't know about for you guys, but for me, decision making is always hard. I'm a people pleaser. It's really easy and it feels fun too. I like, it's like they ask, can you do this and this? I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that because I think it's fun. This is really like a visual way for me daily to remind myself of what do I say yes to and what do I say no to and why? Because it helps me to come out of the feeling like, well, maybe you should be more generous or do more. It's like, wait a second, where is it on my map of my values and what's important to me? Where did this catch me last year? And then I'm going to choose something different this year. So we're really pruning, we're taking away or digging up, moving some of the things that stop us. And often it's really long to-do lists and it's not important. A really good example of this is when my kids were younger. I always folded all the clothes and I would stay up folding all the clothes and I would get really angry and frustrated because it took so much time to fold all the clothes and I didn't have time to read to the kids because I was folding the clothes until I realized, wait a second, reading the kids actually is more important to me. And so I stopped folding clothes. Like I just stopped. I fold my panties and everybody else gets to put, I put into their drawers and now they're big, but so knowing what's really important to us is like our North Star of being able to choose. It helps us with our people pleasing. It helps us when we take, when we have so many demands on ourselves to be able to cipher out what gets to stay and what doesn't get to stay. The other thing that it helps me to do is helps me both with looking back at the last year and of this year to tell a new story about myself, to help myself be in contact with the story that I want to live, my future self, her qualities. It helps me to keep moving in the right direction and being able to see with clarity. So it's really, in a lot of ways, a mindfulness exercise. We're going to open up at the end for questions if anyone wants us, but I'm going to turn off the recording then. But what I'd like to ask, and I'm going to send this out in an email along with the replay, is that everyone that has received anything from this tonight would do me a favor. Basically, I have a survey because I'm really trying to find out how can I best serve the people that are in my world? How can I be of best service and help? And I need to know where you guys are. So in the survey. It may or may not apply to you right now, and that's fine. But it would be really, really helpful for me if you would fill it out. And again, I'll be sending it out. I know it's a lot of thinking. It shouldn't take that long. It's like 10 questions. But again, really, really helpful for me. It helps me to know how to create courses and information and share about things that you would find really helpful and interesting to grow from. I'm also I'm offering an opportunity in there as a thank you to have a 30-minute session with me. And it's not a sales thing, it's just a 30-minute session to whatever you want to talk about. So please feel free to take me up on that.